June 3, 2014, when the first orders tied to what would become the Operation European Deterrence Initiative began moving through U.S. Army channels after Russia's seizure of Crimea. Few outside the briefed rooms understood how quickly Europe's quiet training grounds could feel like the edge of a coming storm. And here is the question that should chill you before we go any further. If deterrence fails in the dark forests of Eastern Europe, who runs toward the gunfire when everyone else dives for cover? Operation European Deterrence Initiative, originally launched as the European Reassurance Initiative in 2014 and later expanded and renamed in 2018, was not a single battle but a sustained U.S. Department of Defense effort to strengthen NATO's eastern flank, increase rotational troop presence, pre-position armored equipment, improve airfields and ports, and fund constant multinational exercises across countries like Poland, the Baltic states, Romania, and Germany. Yet beneath the policy language and budget lines were medics, who trained for a nightmare that thankfully never turned into full-scale war, but always hovered close enough to taste. During major exercises such as Sabre Strike and Defender Europe, U.S. Army combat medics rehearsed treating catastrophic injuries under simulated artillery fire, dragging wounded soldiers from armored vehicles while smoke machines filled the air so thick it burned the throat. Because planners understood that if conflict erupted along NATO's border, casualty evacuation routes could be jammed, GPS could be jammed, and air superiority could not be guaranteed in the opening hours. In 2016, as rotational armored brigade combat teams began deploying to Eastern Europe on a heel-to-toe basis, medics embedded with mechanized infantry units practiced mass casualty drills in freezing rain, their gloves stiff with mud as they inserted chest seals and tourniquets on training mannequins designed to bleed realistically. And one after-action report described how a simulated indirect fire strike forced the aid station to relocate within minutes. A reminder that in modern war, even those marked with a red cross are never truly safe. The horror they prepare for is not cinematic. It is intimate. The metallic smell of blood mixing with diesel fumes inside a Bradley fighting vehicle, the low moan of a soldier in shock, the flicker of headlamps over pale faces while distant artillery thumps like a slow heartbeat in the night. By 2017 and 2018, funding under the renamed initiative supported pre-positioned stocks of tanks and armored vehicles stored in climate-controlled warehouses across Europe, meaning that in crisis, personnel could fly in and draw equipment within days. But that speed also meant medics had to be ready to operate in austere conditions almost immediately, sometimes setting up treatment tents in open fields during multinational exercises where language barriers added another layer of chaos. One chilling scenario rehearsed repeatedly envisioned a convoy hit by enemy rockets along a narrow forest road in the Baltics. Role-players screamed through smoke while instructors detonated simulators to mimic incoming rounds. And medics crawled through mud to reach casualties, knowing that in real combat, secondary strikes often target rescuers, a tactic seen in multiple conflicts around the world. The European Deterrence Initiative has funded billions of dollars in improvements since 2014, including airfield upgrades and infrastructure that allow rapid reinforcement. But infrastructure means little without the human element, and the medic under fire represents that fragile thread between life and death. During Defender Europe 20 preparations in early 2020, before the COVID-19 pandemic forced adjustments, units rehearsed large-scale deployments across the Atlantic, testing how quickly forces could disperse and establish medical support networks across multiple countries. Because planners study not only firepower but survival rates. Historically, U.S. Army medics carry a legacy shaped by conflicts from World War II to Iraq and Afghanistan. And many of those deploying under the European Deterrence Initiative were veterans of counterinsurgency wars now retraining for large-scale combat operations against a near-peer adversary. where artillery, electronic warfare, and armored maneuvers replace roadside bombs, but produce casualties just as devastating. They speak quietly about the difference, about how in Afghanistan you might treat 1 or 2 wounded after an IED, but in a high-intensity European scenario, you could face dozens in minutes. Imagine a field aid station at dusk in Poland during a live-fire exercise. Generators humming, helicopters chopping the sky overhead. When suddenly a simulated missile strike forces lights out and medics must continue by red lens flashlight. Hands searching for pulses in darkness so complete it feels like the world has narrowed to breathing and fear. That is the shadow they train in, because deterrence depends on readiness, and readiness demands confronting worst-case images again and again until hesitation disappears. The initiative's core purpose has always been to deter aggression by demonstrating credible, combat-ready forces alongside NATO allies, and by 2022, after Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, US troop levels in Europe surged, reinforcing the eastern flank in a very real crisis environment, which made every prior rehearsal suddenly feel less theoretical. Medics rotated into countries bordering Ukraine understood that while they were not crossing into active combat, the line between exercise and emergency had grown razor thin. They reviewed trauma protocols for blast injuries, massive hemorrhage control, hypothermia prevention in cold climates, and rapid evacuation under contested airspace conditions. Because if conflict expanded, evacuation aircraft might have to fly low and fast, exposed to surface-to-air threats. There is a particular kind of fear that only those who treat the wounded understand. Not the fear of being shot, but the fear of arriving seconds too late, of watching a pulse fade while artillery echoes beyond the tree line. In training, instructors sometimes let the simulation run long enough for a mannequin's vital signs monitor to flatline, forcing medics to confront that sound, the steady tone that means time has run out. And even though it is artificial, the silence afterward is real. Operation European Deterrence Initiative may read like a budget line in congressional documents. Yet on the ground it is a web of soldiers, allies, armored columns, supply depots, and medics kneeling in mud rehearsing how to keep someone alive until a helicopter lifts them away. And the true power of deterrence lies not only in tanks and missiles, but in the confidence that if the worst happens, someone will crawl through smoke to save you. So here is what I want you to think about as you reflect on this mission that began in 2014 and continues to shape Europe's security landscape today, in a future crisis on NATO's frontier. When the sky flashes and radios crackle with panic, would you have the courage to run toward the wounded knowing the next round might already be falling?